Hace algún tiempo subí un video bastante desenfadado discutiendo ilustraciones inquietantes creadas por niños. Aunque bromeaba sobre muchas de ellas, algunas de la lista realmente parecían tener orígenes inquietantes. En los últimos años he recibido numerosos dibujos infantiles por correo electrónico, a menudo acompañados de sus historias de fondo. Hoy compilaré algunas de estas presentaciones en esta exposición. Este dibujo en particular fue producido por un niño de 5 años en 2011. La imagen fue descubierta en su dormitorio por su hermana mayor, Anya, entonces de 13 años, quien me la reenvió. Posteriormente se la mostró a sus padres. La obra de arte retrata a la familia reunida alrededor de una mesa, representada con el nivel de habilidad típico de un niño pequeño. La razón por la que Anya se la presentó a su familia fue su capacidad para identificar a todos los presentes, incluso al perro y al gato de la familia. El único individuo que no pudo reconocer fue el hombre sentado en el suelo ligeramente detrás de los muebles. Anya mencionó en su correspondencia que cuando le preguntó a su hermano menor sobre la identidad de este hombre, él se encogió de hombros repetidamente y afirmó que no se le permitía hablar al respecto. El hombre estaba representado vestido con ropa oscura y tenía el cabello ligeramente rojizo y ondulado, como era evidente. Debido a la renuencia de su hermano a explicar la presencia de la quinta figura en el boceto, ella se la mostró a sus padres, sugiriendo que podría tener un compañero imaginario o estaba fingiendo percibir espectros. Después de que los padres confrontaron al niño durante una comida, preguntando por el hombre de la ilustración, el niño puso una expresión malhumorada y se encogió de hombros. Hizo esto cada vez que le preguntaban, siendo su respuesta más detallada. No me permiten contarlo. Los padres, especialmente el padre, no estaban excesivamente preocupados, ya que un niño de 5 años podría fácilmente dibujar cualquier cosa y inventar una narrativa elaborada a su alrededor. Anya a menudo se encargaba de supervisar a su hermano cuando sus padres no estaban. Un día, mientras ella estaba a cargo de cuidarlo, oyó a su hermano conversando con alguien en su habitación. Al llegar a su espacio se dio cuenta de que simplemente estaba jugando con su colección de coches de juguete en el suelo, probablemente hablando consigo mismo mientras jugaba. Anya preguntó si estaba hablando con alguien. Él la miró y se encogió de hombros de nuevo, haciendo un mohín. Anya entonces vio algunos caramelos pequeños y de colores brillantes esparcidos en el suelo de su dormitorio. Un tipo específico de dulce con sabor a frambuesa azul que nunca había visto a su madre comprar antes. Le preguntó dónde los había conseguido, but he ignored her. Returning to his play, Anya gathered the sweets, which visibly angered her brother. He began yelling for her to return them. She waited until their parents came back to inquire if either of them had purchased the unusual treats. Since the boy was only 5 and it was the summer break, meaning receiving the candies at school was out of the question, the sudden appearance of random sweets in the boy's room became a source of worry. Even as the boy was reprimanded and pressed by his mother and father about the origin of the candies, he maintained his sulky, displeased expression and disregarded them. The boy was restricted to his room by his father until he provided an answer. He wasn't allowed to exit his space. The family searched all the storage spaces in his room, beneath the bed, and even compartments outside his chamber. The possibility of someone being inside the house seemed unlikely. That same evening he was grounded. Anya sat near her bedroom window instead of on her bed, positioned so she could easily hear if and when her brother in the adjacent chamber would begin speaking. And predictably, when he did, notably well past his usual sleep time, she jumped up and hurried to his room, flung open the entrance, and saw her little 5-year-old sibling standing by his open aperture, speaking to a male figure who appeared as though he was preparing to ascend into the space. Anya cried out for her mother and father, causing the figure at the aperture to retreat, and her brother started to weep. Once Anya informed her parents that a man was interacting with her brother through his window, the authorities were summoned. The boy still refused to speak initially, but with the police present, he eventually admitted that his friend instructed him not to tell anyone about him. Otherwise, he wouldn't be allowed to visit and play anymore. When questioned about his friend's name and age, he stated he didn't know. When asked what the two of them would typically do, the boy recounted that he would bring snacks and confections for him and simply play with his toys. When questioned about how they met, he said they encountered each other in front of the dwelling one day when the man paused on his scooter and offered him some candy. After proposing to return with additional sweets and snacks, Anya's brother indicated which bedroom window was his, and that's when these occurrences began. Submitted to me back in 2016, this account was sent by a mother of 2 young ones, a 7-year-old boy and a 9-year-old girl. Almost nightly between the hours of 1 a.m. and 4 a.m., the boy would come into his parents' sleeping quarters distressed, claiming someone or something was present in his space near the foot of his sleeping area. The boy would assert that every evening, the entity would emerge from beneath his bed and move to the identical position at the end of his bed, simply standing there motionless. The initial few times the parents would inspect the boy's chamber simply to reassure him. The gap beneath the bed was always notably clear. When queried why the space was always vacant when it should have been cluttered with toys, he would insist it was confirmation he was truthful about the thing under his bed. Each time the parents would demonstrate to their son that the area was empty and he would return to slumber. Their 9-year-old daughter never reported any comparable disturbances. For a few evenings, the parents permitted him to sleep in their space on the ground with a cover. However, after this behavior persisted for an extended period, the parents decided to indulge his fears one last time and requested him to illustrate what the presence at the foot of his resting place resembled. His sketch sent chills down their spines. In the illustration was a disturbing, unsettling figure that seemed potent enough to induce nightmares in an adult, let alone a 7-year-old boy. There also appeared to be something depicted near the aperture, and when questioned about this, the boy explained that he occasionally observes it at the window as well when it's not positioned at the end of his bed. The parents' resolution to this issue was relocating their son's bed to the spare study across the passage that didn't have any large underbed spaces. The mother who submitted this couldn't help but feel a bit unnerved herself by the artwork, and every time he would arrive crying at their room in the dead of night, This third and final submission is slightly different in that it comprises a blend of illustrations and text spread across 3 distinct sheets. This material was uncovered by the new caregiver looking after a 10-year-old boy named Ethan in a town near Toronto, Canada. The caregiver, whom I'll refer to as Clara, was needed while Ethan's parents were away for approximately 7 days. According to Clara, Ethan was remarkably quiet and largely kept to himself. He would remain in his chamber for the better part of the day, only emerging to retrieve sustenance from the refrigerator or descend to the lower level to engage with video games. Clara attempted to establish a friendly connection with the child during the first day, but eventually ceased her efforts after realizing Ethan either simply didn't favor her or was generally a very reserved, somewhat unnerving child. Clara typically spent her shifts completing her schoolwork and watching films. She was aware of Ethan's fascination with knives due to the quantity of toy blades he possessed. They were strewn about the dwelling in various spaces, ranging from plastic knives to dull metallic ones and different sorts of imitation-edged weapons. Clara had not yet been inside Ethan's chamber. However, one evening when Clara was having difficulty sleeping, she detected Ethan silently entering the room designated for her and merely standing near the entranceway. She sat upright in her bed and asked Ethan if something was amiss. He then swiftly closed the entrance and she heard him quickly retreating back to his space. The following day, Clara entered Ethan's chamber for the first time. Ethan was not present and the lighting was off. This indicated he was downstairs occupied with video games, as those were the only 2 areas he seemed to inhabit, according to Clara. He didn't appear to seek interaction with peers either. Scattered across Ethan's floor were a multitude of papers. The initial piece of paper that captured her notice was this sketch of a short blade. It wasn't inherently alarming. It merely further demonstrated his fixation on edged tools. Clara sifted through the papers and discovered 4 sheets bound together with 3 different metal fasteners. They formed what could best be described as a small, handmade booklet. The first sheet seemed to serve as the front cover, titled Notes on the Visitor. Immediately, Clara presumed this small compilation was about her. But not wishing to be discovered reading it, she photographed each page of the little booklet, as well as an image of the blade sketch, and exited the chamber to examine them on her device elsewhere. These were the photographs she had taken. This was the subsequent page. Ethan had written on it, "It was a typical day in the house when Mother and Father brought the new visitor over for the first time. There's something about her I despise. I believe it's her unpleasant appearance. She's a massive nerd. I don't want her inside the dwelling. Unsure why my mother and father engaged her. I think I will have to end her." The illustration on the page is intended to be Clara seated on the couch using her device and Ethan observing her through the entranceway. This was the page that followed. It read, "It's day 3 and she persists in being here. Parents think I am a baby or something requiring an irritating, unattractive visitor who consumes all our provisions and beverages." In this sketch, Ethan appears to be reaching for a kitchen knife while Clara is by the refrigerator. The child's profound dislike for his caregiver becomes progressively apparent in a troubling manner. But the next and final sheet is by far the most disturbing. It stated, She detected me sneaking into her chamber. I must be more discreet next time. The illustration is quite clearly Ethan holding a small blade concealed behind his back while Clara reclines asleep in her bed. The implications of this drawing are exceptionally transparent. Clara returned to Ethan's chamber while he was still in the lower level and true enough located a small kitchen knife resting on his bedside stand. Clara transmitted the images of the sketches and the knife to Ethan's parents and then contacted them. Initially, the parents attempted to persuade her that he must merely be jesting. However, they were apparently easily convinced that Ethan might harbor malicious intentions. They arranged for Ethan's aunt to take over that same day. Clara departed the dwelling without ever notifying the authorities or any other regulatory bodies. She accepted her compensation for the week that evening and received the parents' apologies, but not without recommending that they ensure their son receives significant professional assistance.